If it's purely down to football capabilities and, what he's done for the club in the past, then yes, absolutely. But as I said to someone yesterday, like, no one's bigger than the club. If the manager feels like you're not the right person to be in the dressing room, then regardless of how many goals you've scored in the past or what you've done in the past, that's no longer relevant. So if the manager feels that he needs to leave you out, then it's the right decision.
Can you understand his frustration after turning down all that money from Saudi and then signing a new contract only to find himself benched?
Well, yeah, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. We'd all wish we'd made certain decisions at the time, but you can only make the decision you think is correct at that time. If he's turned down bigger money to stay at Liverpool, which, probably was the right decision anyway, he probably had no idea that Liverpool was struggling the way they are at the moment and that his form would dip as much as it has. So if he knew that, he probably would have left last year or maybe the year before. But like I say, hindsight's a wonderful thing.
It is a wonderful thing. But do you think there's something more going on?
Well, it's clearly... Well, usually for a player to speak out publicly, there's a lot more that happens before that moment. That's not normally the first, place to go to or the point of call. Normally that's like last resort. Now his head's fallen off and now it's like, can't take anymore. Because normally you'd have a few bust-ups in private before this moment. And obviously we'd never know that if that's happened. So I can only presume it has. Because obviously, when I've ever spoken to the lads, they all say how good of a lad Mo is. And, when I've met him, he's been great. And, you don't get to the level that he has if you don't train your socks off. So he seems like the perfect pro, the perfect professional. So for him to have an outburst, there must be something wrong behind the scenes for sure.
And as has been brought up and mentioned in the media in the past couple of days, he never does anything spontaneously with the media. It's all well thought of. So what on earth has happened that the press hasn't got a sniff on?
Yeah, that's the same thing that I haven't got a sniff on. We just can't put the finger on it. But there's a lot in football. There's a hell of a lot that goes on in the training ground, behind the scenes, in the meeting rooms, in the dressing room, and obviously nowadays there's very little places to hide. So you'd normally get a sniff of something. But I guess Liverpool as a whole have just been under so much scrutiny and been under the microphone and the microscope just because of their form overall, and then people start looking for certain things and digging things, and then players come under pressure, and then it's harder for them to snap out of their bad form, and then things just get worse and worse and worse and worse, and then obviously something happens. But what started it, instigated it, or what's going on behind the scenes, it's impossible to guess.
Yeah. What about Slot ripping? It seems he's been sort of ripping up last season's system that worked so well for Salah for a new one to fit in Wirtz and Isak and whatnot, who are both not performing to their A level, so to speak.
Yeah.
At the cost of Salah's form, seen from his perspective, you think that could be the case? That he's simply frustrated that this has been going on?
Possibly. But even when Mo's himself, there's times he looks frustrated. Sometimes his body language on the pitch can be crazy, and then all of a sudden he'd go and score 2 or 3 goals, so people wouldn't talk about it. It just looks worse when they're not winning and he's not scoring. Now his body language, people just want to talk about it slightly. But I don't think any manager should play for a player. You need to play for your squad, and if it don't suit Mo, then sorry, it don't suit Mo, but it might suit 9 of the others. But I don't think it's anything to do with the manager's change. The manager's going to try and find any formation or any sort of niche in his belt that can help the team and help the club. So he's going to do what he sees in training and do the best thing. But I think it's just a fact at the moment that there's so many players out of form. You can play any formation you want; it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, but for his status at the club, do you think he deserves better communication from Slot about where he stands?
Yes, but I wouldn't say better, because I don't know if they talk behind the scenes. They might have been talking daily, so I couldn't say better. But definitely now seeing what's been said the last few days, then absolutely their communication isn't where it should be. So yeah, this conversation for me, like, it would make me boil if I was involved in this and it was all in the public like this, when like there's, you know, innocent players that are working their socks off daily and all they've got to talk about is this rubbish. Like, it's not fair on everyone, you know? Like, you've got other important players in the dressing room that are working their socks off. They might not be playing to the same level of that they're capable of, but they're still part of Liverpool Football Club that want to win just as much as anyone. And they got to sit there and listen to this nonsense.
Can you understand Salah being fed up with, let's call it sniping from Carragher? Do you think he listens to it at all?
Yeah, I'd say so, because it's almost impossible to ignore everything now.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird thing because, you know, it started as a bit of fun. I don't know. Maybe Mo is not as, like, you know, because it's quite tough to ignore certain comments from people, but you have to do it because it's going to happen. But there is a day that everyone's got a breaking point for sure. And to put up with stupid comments from people is easy when you're on fire, you're on top of the world, because you're like, who cares? Like, you're not affecting me, blah blah blah. But when it looks like you're being affected, and you might not be being affected from those comments, but when you're not playing as well as you're used to, then the comments are happening, everyone's more fragile.
But allow me to ask, where do you stand on this? Because clearly I'm a big supporter of Mo, and I think he's bang out of order. I am furious at him. Where do you stand?
Yeah, well, the same. Like, you know, his bloody record goal scorer, he's been a legend for the club. Yes. But we can't all live in the past. You're still at Liverpool. I think, deserves Liverpool a hell of a lot more than what's happened recently. So I'm just as angry as you, really. In a sense, I didn't think, you know, there's certain players in the Premier League or even football that you'd expect it from. But Mo don't seem that sort of guy. So, but I also don't seem as the guy that would sort of say that kind of comment to try and get out of the club. So it would just be so interesting to see his reasoning behind it. But yeah, as overall, of course, I'm not happy with it. And like I said, my sympathy is more with the other players because they don't deserve to listen to it either.
But you think he's going to play again for Liverpool? You think he's not finished? Yeah,
I think he will, because it'd be such a shame if he goes out like this. You know, it's a sort of player you still want around and need around. If he can, like, you know, we had it before with Chelsea. I know we're not talking about them, but when Enzo said something at the start of the season, yeah, it's like it's going to take some while to, you know, to win your teammates back over and win the fans back over. But he did that now, and look at him, he's one of their most important players. So you can't just wave the flag at someone because they've been out of order or whatever. You need to still try and work with someone that's got huge value and huge importance to the club. So you need to try and work it out. Whether they can or not is a different story.